Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to part 17 of the Employee Manager. We're going to be covering payroll, finishing up on payroll this week. We've covered payroll details, and now we're going to get into reviewing employees, where we have the ability to click Save, and next we also have the ability to select and go to a specific employee very quickly. We also now have an amazing progress bar, which I'm going to show you how we got to there, as well as the summary and create section, where we can see a summary of the payroll and create that. So we've got a lot to cover in this final part of the payroll, the Employee Manager. Let's get started. Alrighty, great. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. It's going to creating amazing Employee Manager, and we're on to the payroll section, and this is actually part 3 of the payroll section. We're now on part 17 of the Employee Manager. Make sure, of course, that you download this application. I'll put the links in the description below, so you want to get your free copy of this. And also within the links down below, make sure you do check out our amazing dashboard course, where you can get a full featured single-click dashboard that you've never seen before. So make sure you click the link below, and all the details are there. All right, let's get started on this payroll details. We've covered payroll details, where we have the ability to select specific employees and then add them to the payroll which we're going to be paid. We also have the ability to filter. We did cover that last time in both parts 1 and part 2, so we're not going to go over that this time. And in this case, we're going to finish up and continue on review employees, as well as the summary and create. And now, if you'll remember, in past we had the ability to review each employee. So for example, if we're going to go back to the payroll details and start a new payroll, and we select employees to review, we now have a whole list of employees to review. We also have a progress bar. We've got a total of 11 employees here that need to be paid, that need to be reviewed, and we've got a progress bar which we're going to show you here that's going to progress as we review each individual employee. We've also added a little employee icon here. There are often times when you're looking at an employee and you want to look in their specific file. So easier than going over to the Employee Manager and searching for that employee in the drop-down list. I've made it easy with just a simple click of an icon. So if you're looking at this and you want to edit and look at this employee's file, simply click the icon here, and it's going to take you right to that employee, and then you have the ability to view or look at or make changes to that specific employee's record. So it's a great little shortcut. I'm going to show you how we did that. So of course, as you move forward and review, you want to make sure you review all the employees before moving on to the summary. If of course we do try to go to the summary and create without reviewing all employees, we want to let the user know that, hey, we need to review all of those employees first before we move on to the next step. So I've included this little message box that basically says, all employees have not been reviewed yet. Please review each employee before moving to the summary and confirmation section. That's important because we want the ability to review not only the time clock entries, we want to be able to review the tax information. We also may have specific deductions that we want to enter. We have specific payroll additions, as well as employee paid leave, and we've got a whole section on employee paid leave. We're going to go over that too, so I'm excited to show that to you. We've got a lot of formulas that I'm excited to show you. We've got sum if, we've got max, we've got lots of index and match. So we've got a ton of great features that we're going to show you, including some product as well. So not only do we create an amazing application, but I'm going to show you some special tricks, formulas on how we go about it so that you can do the same in your own projects and how you create them. So I'm going to walk you step by step through the process. So whether you're customizing this application or creating your own from scratch, I'm going to give you all the tools that you can do that. And please notice also we've got a specific payroll. We're going to be able to add in this so you can select a specific payroll and add that in the future. I still have to add that functionality when you change the payroll. We'll load it different payrolls, but that's almost nearly completed, and I'll go ahead and review that next time. But we also have a payroll status, and this is really good. This helps us determine the status of it. So this is still pending review, and that's important to keep a specific status of each employee, of each payroll, so that we know where it is. So as we review, let me shrink this up a little bit, it's a bit too big. There we go. Okay, so now you can try to get it. We'll try to get it all in the screen there, so that you can see it. There's a lot of functionality. And so as we review each employee, we want to go through. So for example, when we go save and next, it's going to put a green check mark. We went over that last time, and it's going to load certain information. So as we get through to all employees, once we click review of the last employee, we're going to see that this pending review changes to automatically to pending confirmation. Now we're done with all the employees. Now we can move to the next step. Notice 1111 employees have been reviewed. We're at 100%. We are ready to move on to the next step, which is summary and create. Two ways to do that. You can click here on the summary create, or you can click this button here. In fact, let's go ahead and move that over. We don't need that so far over on the left. And so what we can do is click this button, and that'll bring us to the next step, which is the summary and create. Once we're on this summary and create, we have really just two functionalities. We can review all of the totals here, and this could give us a list of all of our employees, and the summary, and we're going to show you just how we did that, so we've got a lot to cover in this. And of course, the total payroll summary for all employees. We've got some information here, including the payroll date. We've got the period from payroll, the starting point and the ending day for the payroll. And so once we click confirm and create payroll, we're going to change the status from pending confirmation to confirmed, and automatically the screen is going to change. So now the payroll is confirmed. And we're going to show you how we did that. Now, basically, this payroll is made up into about 4 different databases. We do have to track payroll as it is, the entire payroll. So we need a payroll ID. And if you notice previously, we have the payroll ID right here and a payroll row right here. Now, those are from our payroll list. This is a list of all the payrolls. We've got a list of the payroll ID number. That's going to be unique, and it's assigned each time to a new. So we always want a unique ID. We'll notice with almost every list we have that. We also have a payroll range. That's the date range. We have a start date, an end date. Excuse me. We have a payroll date. That's the date that we're actually creating the payroll or sending out the payroll. And we have the from date, the date, the start date, and the to date, as well as the status. So it's a very, very simple list here, but that controls a lot. Okay, so we have just those 6 components of our payroll, and that's enough for the main payroll, but we also need a few other things. If you'll notice here, we've got a list of employees. All of these employees we know are going to be part of this payroll, and you'll notice that those employees were not part of it. These are part of a separate table, and of course, linking those is our payroll ID. Our payroll ID is key to every list. So if we look here in our payroll employee list, this is another simple list. And all we do is we track the payroll ID number. That's important. Employee ID number. Notice there's no employee name. Employee names can change. Employee IDs cannot change. So we're just focused on the employee ID. Employee IDs will never change. This way, when we run our payroll, we're always going to use a formula to pull our employee names so that in case the name is changed, it's always going to be an accurate employee name, and that's really important. We also want to know the status of this. The status. What is that? The status? Well, that is the status of this review, right? We need to know if it's a green check mark, they've been reviewed, but if it's an hourglass icon, we know that that's still pending review. So we need to track that in case we leave the in case we leave the payroll and return back. We need to know which employees have been reviewed and which ones have not. So that's very important to store that information somewhere so that we can return. So when we return to a specific payroll, for example, if we click a payroll here, a different payroll, and we return back to it, we need to know the status of that. So that's very important. So we have to track the status of that employee. I also want to know what payroll row, what is the row and the table row. What are those things important? When we, here in our payroll, I need to know what row. This is row 9, this is row 10. So if I reload this list, I want them reloading in the same exact order they were previously. So I want to know what row 15, row 13. So we store that row. Right here. And of course the table row, that's the current row of the data. And this can help us out in the future in case we do make changes. For right now, it's just a temporary holding place. We don't use it too much, but it's always helpful because when we run an advanced filter, if we need that information here and we make changes, we always know what row to make the changes. So if we review an employee, if we review and we set that, we need to know what row that is. So it's really important that we know the row of the database. Okay, so we store that row, right? I store that row once they've been reviewed. Let me store that row right here. So we click home, and I'm going to change that font color to black so you can see it, and then we'll expand the column a little bit so you'll see the rows are stored here. So that if we make a change to this, if we make a change to the specific status, we know what row, 126, right? And we know what column to change that, right? When we know the column, because the column is always going to be C, the status is always, and we just need the row. So you'll see that as you learn the way that I program and the way that we can create these very easily with this mapping, so we know what row to save it in. So that's really, really important. I want to show that to you, and of course, how we go about doing that. So I want to go through that with you. So the employee list, that's the second component of our payroll. That's the second table. We need to store that separately. We also have a payroll item list. What is all of this payroll item list? We may have gone over it briefly before, but not in detail. So I'm going to go over that in detail too. And this is basically all of the items here. And that includes tax items here. And that includes payroll deductions here. That includes payroll additions and employee paid leave. So those are all the items, the components of a payroll, not the time clock, because that's pulled from the time clock database, right? The time clock is always going to be pulled from our time clock list here. So that's already stored right here in the time clock. That's already stored. We got that covered already, so we don't need to worry about that, storing that. So we just need to pull these components. So we can put, even though these are different, right? Even though they're all different, one's a deduction, one's tax, one's additions, one's leave, we can store them in the same table as long as we know what type, right? We need to know this is a tax type. We need to know that this is a deduction type. We need to know that this is an addition, and we need to know that this is a leave type. Otherwise, they're pretty similar. This one's hours, this one's amount. So they're pretty similar, but we can put all that in a single database as long as we specify the type difference. So when we look at the payroll item, we have our payroll ID. Now that is clear. We need to remember, we need to know what payroll this is for. We need to know what employee it's for. So those are critical, right? We always need to tie that back to a specific employee and a specific payroll. We also need to know the item type. Remember, we just discussed it. We can use them all in the same table as long as we separate them by type. Some are tax items, some are deductions, some are regular pay, some are overtime pay. So every item in the regular pay, let's go ahead and look at that. I didn't cover that yet. Regular pay would be here. We need to know how much. Overtime pay, we need to know how much. Or if it's a salary pay, if it's a salary, let's see if I got any salary employees. Salary as well would go there. We need to know the difference between that. Let's see if I've got a salary employee here. Here's one right there. Okay, so this salary employee would be 928. So that's a salary type. So we have different types of pay, and the reason we want to separate those pay types is because we may want to know how much in salary, how much in hourly, how much in overtime. So when we separate those by type, we can total them by type. So that when we go to summary and create, we can separate those items. We know how much of the gross earnings, how much deductions, how much other, because we have separated them by type. We can even drill down even farther if we wanted to. I've grouped gross earnings, but theoretically you could say how much in salary, how much in overtime. In fact, maybe I'll add that here. That would be kind of nice. Gross earnings. In other words, we have gross earnings. Then basically this is any type that shows pay, and I'll go over this with you. But theoretically, in this summary, I could break it down even farther. I could say total salary, total hourly, total overtime. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll expand this list a little bit. It might be nice to know instead of just gross earnings. And the reason we can do that is because we've separated them. Overtime pay here, regular pay here, salary pay here. As long as they're separated, we can total them. So perhaps we'll do that. And so the idea, here's what I'd like to teach you, is that you can also combine items within a database, even if they're very different items, as long as you separate them by their type or by whatever differentiation there is. In this case, it's item type. And they're because many are similar, because each of them have an item name. Most of them have an amount, not all of them. For example, let's take a look here. A leave type wouldn't have an amount. I think let's see, we'll get that. Yeah, for example, here, leave type, other deductions may not have, but leave shouldn't have an amount. Leave just has hours, so I'll find one. I don't see one here, but we have them. They're existing somewhere in there. I haven't built out this database too much, but a leave item would only have hours. Leave item, paid leave, for example, here we go. Paid leave is a sick paid leave. This type of item doesn't have an amount associated with, just the number of hours that we're paying, that we're compensating that employee for that, and that gets added on to the total hours. So we need to separate that by one, the item type and the item name. So that's going to help. So we also want to know a pay date. I want to know, now this is a formula. Why is the pay date a formula? But what if, and this formula is this: it's the payroll date. We're matching the payroll ID. It comes from the payroll list, and I'll go over that with you. So what I want to do is I want to look for payroll ID, and I want to find out in the payroll list, what is the date of this? What is the payroll date? Because if this changes, if I change the payroll date right here, if I change this payroll date here, I want it to change for all the payroll items. Maybe we got the date wrong, right? Or maybe we want to change the date. I also want all of these dates to change too, so that we get an accurate date of all of these things. It's very important for accounting. So that's why we've chosen to use a formula, because all of these are tied to a specific date assigned to this payroll ID. If we look in here, payroll list, payroll ID. So if I change this date to 9/3, and we look back on that payroll item list, we see they've all been changed to 9/3, and that's really helpful. This way we don't have to go back and change everything. So I try not to use too many formulas in lists, but where it's really, really important, I do, because we don't want to add tons of formulas where they're not needed. But in this case it is, because I need these pay dates to be dynamic. If that payroll date changes, I want the pay date for each one of the associated items within that to change as well. And of course, likely the year too. And the pay year is also a formula, and that just denotes the year. And sometimes we need this for specific year-to-date values, and we also need this for specific paid leave, because we track paid leave on an annual basis as well. So we need the paid year, so we've included it. And again, the payroll row. Why do we include the payroll row? Because I need to know when we save, for example, when we save a tax item for employee number 1, I need to know it's on row 15. So when we go back to the row and we look at row 15, I know that this tax item is going to be placed right here when we load that employee. For example, when we load this employee, I need to know what row it's putting on it. So for example, in this payroll number, let's see, we are on payroll number payroll ID is 20. Our payroll ID is stored here, and that is in row 22. How do we find that? We're going to use match, a simple max. And what we've done is we've defined the payroll ID and we're matching it. The payroll ID is a named range. And again, let's go ahead and look at that under the formulas and the name manager. And we'll just, let me bring that up so you can see the entire one. Bring it up a little bit more. Okay, so we'll type in PAY. It's going to get us a little bit closer. Payroll ID, and we tab over that, and we realize that it's on the payroll list. And it's a dynamic range that includes all of the items there, all of the items within the list. So that is helping. It's a dynamic range, so as this list grows, so does this range. And that's going to be helpful, so we know where our payroll IDs are located in that list. Now you'll notice we also added 2. Why do we add 2 to this formula? Let's take a look here. Why do we add 2? Because I need to know the row. I need to know the row. So for example, for the first one, if we're looking for the first one, it's going to return 1, right? Because it's the first one. But I need to know the row. I need to know 3. So we just add 2. That gets us the row. Since our first item starts on row 3, we always need to add 2 to the match item to get us the exact row. So we always add 2, and that's going to tell us what row. So the current payroll is 20, right? Payroll ID is 20, and it's on row 22 here. Payroll ID 20, payroll row 22, using the index match and adding. If there's an error, we just want a blank. So we know the payroll ID and we know the payroll row. And here's the item info. We also know that the payroll range is this. And we know that the payroll date is on January 6th. And we also have the ability to have in the payroll from and payroll to, and of course the payroll status. Those are important things. So as we load this payroll, we can know that, and we pull that up. We can use advanced filter to do just that, to pull that up. All right, so let's continue where we left off. Now you got a basic idea of what we're trying to achieve with this. So basically the idea, we review each employee, we move to the, once they're all reviewed, we're allowed to move to the next step. Once we've looked this over, and all we really have to do is say, okay, everything is correct, and then we can click. This has already been confirmed, but what if it's not confirmed? Let's go back just so you know, follow along, because it's a bit of a complicated. Okay, so we create a payroll, they're all pending, right? We go through each payroll, save and next, we review, we add items. Maybe we want to, for example, maybe we want to add an amount here, 200, right? And we want that information saved, and it will be. So when we do save and next, right, and we go, and now you see the other one has been loaded up. So tools payment, we have 100 is for this employee, but we want to go back to this one. Let me reduce the size of the screen just a little bit to 90% so you can try to see everything that we're focused on here. All right, so that's a little bit better. And so now when we go back, we'll see that this 200's been saved, right? Because how does it know? How do we know? Well, we know it's on row 658. We store the row here. This is going to be hidden. We store the row here. These are all going to be hidden using a font color. But that way, when we make a change, if the change has already been saved, and I'll walk you through that just a little bit, but I want to give you the overview first so you understand what's going on. So as we review each employee, we move through it, and once they're all reviewed, we move on to the next step. So save and next, we make changes, we add, deductions, we add additions, we add paid leave, and we continue on. And on and on and on and on. Okay, so now we're done. Now they're all reviewed. We've reached the last employee. Everything is reviewed. We're ready to go on to the next step, summary and create. Now you'll see this last step is not checked off. We haven't confirmed it yet. You'll notice that the payroll is pending confirmation. So just to check everything, and you'll notice if we go into our payroll list here, this is now payroll ID 21. That's the one we're focusing on because that's the next one on the list. We just created a new one, and it's pending confirmation. So as soon as we say, okay, confirm and complete, notice we cannot print the pay stubs yet because that's not confirmed. But as soon as we click confirmed, now we can print the pay stubs. Now it's confirmed, and if you look on our payroll list, now it's confirmed here. So everything is tracked in our payroll list. Okay. Every item that focuses on is tracked in our item list. Every employee is tracked here in our employee list. And we also have our payroll. So it's really just three databases that go along with it, and our payroll. So that's pretty much it. Exactly as we did. So now we can print the pay stubs. This is not functioning yet, but this is going to be part of our reports. Printing pay stubs is part of a report. So we're going to do that next week. And I'm going to show you just how we do the printing of the pay stub, but that's going to be part of the report. So we're going to build that out. I'm really excited to show that to you. A lot of people asked me about that. Okay, so last week we left off on the review portion of this. So there's two parses. If they have not been confirmed yet, if they have not been reviewed yet, we want to load their information from their employee. We want to load the tax information from their employees. Let's go back and just show you real quick, and we'll go review again, create a brand new payroll. So this information is coming from their employee information. You see Social Security, federal unemployment, that's coming from their employee. So if we click on that employee and we go into the payroll in details and we look at the tax information, we're going to see three items here, three different items. If we were to add a different one, add a new one, and perhaps put a rate on it, then we're going to see, and we can just put, and there we go. Now, so now that we've saved that, we've added that information, if we go back into the payroll and we click on the review stage, it's going to pull that information. I have to update the formulas on this, but it's going to pull that information from there, So that's where it is going. That's where it's going. So you can see here into the tax information under that. Now we have that. It's a bit too much here, but so now you can see how it pulls the information. However, However, this is important. Once they're reviewed, this information gets saved in it. And we'll fix this error. Let's take a look at this. I've got two specific items that are exactly the same. So let's go ahead and pull that up and change that to something more custom so they're not exactly the same on that. We don't want two items the same. So we've got two different tax items. Let's add one more tax item just so we can see how you do that. In the admin screen, we can add multiple tax items under the payroll details. Here we've got, this is test one. Let's go ahead and add it there. Now we've got another one. So now when we go back into the employee manager here, we have an additional one, test one. So now we shouldn't have that conflict anymore in the payroll screen because we have taken care of the duplicates there. So now we've gotten rid of the ref because those are different. We cannot have too many. So now when we refresh the employee, we'll see that it's been automatically, because we have can't have two of the same tax items. So I'll make sure to put a notification on that so that doesn't happen anymore. And also, so now that once we review it, what I want this to be frozen, right? I want this information to be frozen. I want it to go directly into the payroll details, payroll item list here. I want it to be put down here. So there's two conditions. If we're reviewing employee, if we have not reviewed them yet, we want to pull this from the employee information. We want to pull the deductions, right? Notice there's 3 deductions. I want to pull this from the employee information, and I want to pull this from the employee information. So I want to pull all that from, but once it's been reviewed, I want to pull it from the pay item list, right? If they're reviewed, let's say I add something on just for this specific paycheck, just for one paycheck, I want to add a specific deduction. Let's just say loan repayment, right? It's only for this specific payroll, right? Not for another one. If it's for everyone, we're going to add it in the employee, but I only want it for this one. And there's no year to date on this one because we haven't added it yet. So loan repayment. So we're going to add that on. Now when we click, let's go back, save and next, right? I want this information, save and next. Okay, now it's saved, right? So now, but when I go back to that specific employee, I need it to pull it. It's not part of their employee list, it's just for this payment. But because they've been reviewed, I want it to pull that up. Right? So I want to pull it up from the payroll item list. I want to pull it from right all the way down. All the way down here is where I want to pull it from. Right here is where it's coming from, right here. Because it's been saved already, because we have reviewed it already, it knows to pull it from the payroll item list. If it has not been reviewed, it's going to pull it from the employee database. Okay, so let's go into the code and see just how we did that. And that's what we did last time. That's where we left off last time in last week's. In last week's, what we did is we had employee load review, right? And there's 2 conditions in this. If you remember condition, we have one condition where if, let's pull it up here, if AA review equals 6. What is this 6? This is the pending icon. 6 is that icon. Let's look at that in the payroll. What is 6? 6 is right here. 6 is here. You see that? 6 is the same thing as the icon, right? Is the icon. So if I put a 6 in here, based on, that's a 6, based on the Wingdings font, it's going to show that, which is the hourglass icon. So we want that to show. So we're saying if it's an hourglass icon, then it has not been reviewed. Otherwise, it has been reviewed. So basically, the idea is, so if it's an hourglass, pull the information from the employee info, which is what we went over last time. So if it equals 6, then it's a pending status, and I guess I can put here pull from employee info, okay, or the employee database. We don't want to pull it all from the employee defaults. So that's how we did it last time. We pulled the employee leave, all this from the employee leave. Else, here's the else previously saved, pull from payroll item list. Okay, so otherwise we're pulling right from the payroll item list, and that's what we wanted. So if that's the case, that's what we're going to take off this time. I also need to know the payroll ID. That's very important. Why do I need to know the payroll ID? Because I need to pull up some information a little bit later on concerning the status. So we keep that. Remember, the payroll ID is in B2, so that's important. We're going to need that payroll ID. And also we now want to run an advanced filter. Why do I want an advanced filter? Well, what I want to do is I want to pull all the information from that specific payroll. And let's just go over that employee information right now. What I want to do is I want to go through the payroll item list and I want to run an advanced filter for one specific payroll and one specific employee, right? Payroll 22 and employee 1220. I want to run an advanced filter. I want to know every single item in the list where both of those conditions are true. Why are those two conditions? One, we need to know this is payroll 22, right? This is employee 1220. So for every single item that we have saved or will save, we want to pull that information out. If it's been reviewed, we want to pull that. So we need the advanced filter. I know everything about that. So that's part of it. And let's continue on. So sheet 19, clear previous criteria. Sheet 19, what is sheet 19? Sheet 19 is the payroll item list. Payroll item list, we were just looking at that. So we're going to run advanced filter on the payroll items, right? I need to know if they've been saved or not yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to load all of that information from that, right? So we know because they've been reviewed, I need to pull that information. As soon as we click here, all the information, but it doesn't come from the employee, it comes right from this payroll item list. And we can do that just by an advanced filter. Two criteria, the payroll ID and the employee ID. That's going to return every single item for that employee for that specific payroll. Then all I have to do is figure out, go down for each specific item. If it's a tax item, put that information, put the amount, put that information in row 14. If it's an other deduction item, put that information. In fact, tax item the amount will be automated based on a formula, but we certainly want to put the item name there. Other deduction, we need to know the item name, we need to know the amount, and we need to know what row in the payroll to put it in. For example, health insurance is going to go on row 14 in the other deductions. Health insurance, what row is this? 14. I know what row, and I know what amount right here. So we need to know that, so we have to run that advanced filter, so we only are working with those specific items. So that's really, really important. So I wanted to show that to you. So as we continue within our code, let's move forward. So first thing we want to do is I want to clear the contents. I want to clear any previous data that might have been in there, and that's here. I want to clear any previous data, all the way from starting with the criteria, M3, all the way over to V and way down. I just want to clear all of that out. I want this to be empty. So that I want to clear that information out. So when we run a new advanced filter, we want to make sure there's no old data. So M through U999, clear those contents. So that's really important. Next up, what I want to do is I want to set the payroll ID into M3. And I also want to put the employee ID in N3. So those two criteria are used for our advanced filter. I just showed you that right here. We need both of those. M3 and N3 have to have that information. So as soon as we select on that, all that's going to be reviewed. So let's pull that data back up simply by just selecting on that employee, and that's going to pull all that information right back up into the payroll. And so our payroll M3, and 3 is going to put our employee ID. So we have that there, and now we're ready to run our advanced filter, but I need to get the last row of the data. I need to know what is the last row of this data to run. In this case, it's 686, so we need to get that last row. That's important. So let's go ahead and continue on with our code. So the last payroll item, that's going to be sheet 19A, and we'll use a large number, and XLF row. That's going to get us our last data. And of course, we just need to do a double check to make sure there actually is payroll. We don't want to run all these advanced filters if there's actually no data. So if the payroll last pay item is less than 3, then go to no pay data, which is going to skip all this and go right down here. All right, so assuming that there is data, we can then move on to our advanced filter. We're going to start out again with sheet 19, starting in A2. That advanced filter must include the headers. We must include the headers always. So it's going to start over in A2 right here, and it's going to continue on to all the way over to J and the last row. So we're going to cover that in our advanced filter, taking the whole database J in the last row. We're going to run our advanced filter, and we want to copy it because I don't want to filter within the existing database. And we're going to use the specific criteria, those two specific cells that we focused on. It's going to cover all the way from M2 to N3. It does have to include the headers. So we want to make sure that our criteria is covered in the headers. And we're going to copy that all the way to P2 through V2. And that is where our results are going to be placed, in P2 through V2, right here. So it's going to put all of our results right here. And now what we can do, now we're going to, once we have our data, first I want to get the last row of our data so that we know to run a loop from the first row, 3, all the way to the last row. We're going to run a loop and add all this information here into our payroll. And of course, if we need to put an if, for example, our last row is less than 3, we want to exit. That means there's no filtered data. So we want to run that check as well. So we'll go ahead and go through that. And we can do that right here in the code. If the last filter row, we get the last filter row, which we're going to use in row P999, end all up. If the last filter row is less than 3, go to no pay data. That means there's no filtered data. Now, of course, assuming there is actually data, which is all the way in the last row, we're going to run our loop. Pay item row equals 3 to the last filter row. Now we've got our loop. Now we can separate. Now we can go ahead and say, if it's a regular pay, do this. If it's a deduction, do this. If it's an addition, do this. If it's a paid leave, do this. So now as we load the information back into payroll, it's based on the specific type. The first thing we want to do is item type. Our item type is going to be located in P in the pay item row. That's going to set our item type because we need to know that item type. That's very, very important, and that's going to be located right here into P. We need to know what that item is because I need to know where to put it, what column, what row. So that's going to help us. So moving forward, let's go ahead and look. If the payroll is a regular, then AK9 equals V, and what is this? This is the table row for an update. If there's an update, I want to put the row into column V because I need to know where to save it. So what is in V? V is the table row. That's the row, that the original row that this item is located, 674. What is that? That is down here. Under right here, 674. Here is the original row. So if there's a change to this amount right here, I need to know where to put it. I need to know exactly where to put it. I know the column because it's column E. That's the amount column. I just need to know the row. So we're going to put that, and I'm going to place that in a very specific cell so that if there's any changes to that, we know exactly where to update it. And where are we going to place it? Well, we're going to place that right in AK9 on the payroll. Let's take a look at that. Under AK9 in the payroll screen here, AK9 is right here, 674. You see 674? It's right here. Now, if there's any changes to the total, we know exactly where to save it. For example, if we decide to make a change to the time clock, right here, and we decide to make this 3:38 p.m., that's a change on the total, right? So now our total's going to be changed based on that. Oh, sorry, our overtime in this case would be changed on that, or overtime, since we've already hit the max, so our overtime changed. So if we make, so right now it's 49, but if we make another change, just so we can see it, because it's actually more hours, their regular pay is set on this, so their overtime actually is going to get changed to, now it's 109. But we also know exactly where to change that overtime because it's in 675. So we know automatically when we click save and next, we know exactly where to change, where to put that 109 in 675. So we go back to the list and we look at 675, we see it's now been updated to 109. 109, you see, because we know the row. So when we go through that save macro, which I haven't been through, we know where to save it. So that's really important that we know the original rows. So we always put the original rows. So continuing on our macro, we know why we put AK9 is going to be for our regular, and for AK10, that's going to cover our overtime. So we put the row of the database right there. We know where to save it. And of course, we also want the salary pay. Salary pay is in AK10. We're not going to have overtime and salary in the same, so we can use the same cell for both of those because it's either going to be salary or overtime. All right, so we've covered those three: regular pay, overtime, and all we have to do, because the amounts are automatic, we don't need to save update the amounts in here because the amounts are automatically calculated. So we just need to save the updated amounts back into the database because we need to know. All right, so if it's a tax item, what are we going to do? Well, we just want the tax name and the row. Why no amount? Because the amount's calculated. The amount is based on a formula, so we don't want to bring the amount back into. For example, if it's a tax item, let's go over tax item. We have a tax item, we have an amount, 527 here, but that's calculated in our payroll. Calculated, right? Calculated here. This is based on a formula. So we don't want to erase that formula. That formula is based on these amounts here. So we want to make sure that formula is active. So if we make any changes to our salary or hourly, this amount updates automatically. So it's a one-way save, meaning we take this amount, we save it into the database, but we don't need to bring them from the database back into it. All I need is the name and all I need is the row. So if there's a change to this name, I know what row to save it in. In this case, it's 677. So we know how that works. All right, moving on. We have the ability to save, so we tax item. It's the same thing for each one, each type. So for example, for other deductions we are not calculated, so we can put an amount in. We have the name, we have the amount, and we have the row, and that's all saved exactly in there. So we bring that information right back into the table. So for example, AP, AQ, and AS is where we save the deduction item name, amount, or table row into payroll. Let's look at that under deductions here. AP, AQ, and AS. AS is where we put the row. AQ, AP, and AS. AP, AQ, and AS. Those are the three information we're bringing. So we know if we make a change to the name or the amount, we know exactly what row to save it back in the database. This way we don't get duplicates. It's always saved. The same exact for other addition, the same exact for paid leave. It's just the difference of locations, but it's exactly the same. So that's how we load the data. That is how we load it. And all we did is we stopped the calculations and reset the calculations. So that is the difference between loading. So now you see the difference between loading one that's been reviewed or one that has not been reviewed. So we have two different conditions when we load that. And of course, all these numbers do get hidden. So just simply by clicking home and changing the font color back to the background color, which is this, you'll see that it's been hidden. So that user doesn't see that. All right, moving on. Now we know how but how do we get those changes? We made changes, but how do we get that information to save? When we click Save and Next, how do we get that information to save? Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And that's assigned macro. We have assigned a macro that, and a macro that's called Payroll Save Employee Pay. Let's go ahead and take a look at that macro now. All right, into the VBA editor, we also have here a module called Payroll Save Employee Mac, and it's located here. And if we scroll up, we're going to go through this macro here, Payroll Save Employee. And the first thing we need to do is we need to define the payroll ID as a string, employee ID as a string, pay type as string. Of course, the review row, that is the row that we're currently on. As we move through, we need to keep track of what row that we're on. So that's really important. We need to know that. So we want to track that as well. Let's go ahead and move this over. And so we need to know what review row, so we have to track that. Next up, we also have the payroll list row. That is the row, the payroll row that we're on for the ID, the specific row in which the payroll has been saved on, and that is in this list right here. So I need to know the row here. That's important, whatever row that we're on. And of course, that row is located right here. It's saved here under B3. We're covering that as well. All right, next up in our VBA, we have the payroll row. That, of course, that's actually going to be the row in the payroll screen that we're working on. That is whatever row that we're focused on, that's going to be that row. So we've dimensioned that. We also have the pay item row. As we move through the list of pay items, we need to know what row. Pay employee row, that's for the employee. Remember, we have different databases that we're loading. We're loading employees, we're loading information. So we're going to go through that as well. And the last pay employee row, we're going to run that. And of course, we're primarily focused on sheet 16, which is our payroll. So of course, we're going to use that with sheet 16, and that's right here. Our payroll is what we're focused on sheet. So first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the payroll has been saved or not. Right? So for example, if a payroll has been saved, this payroll has been saved because we've created The payroll should be saved as soon as we review the first employee. We want to save that payroll. And that means in the payroll list right here. So for example, we're focused on 22. That payroll has been saved. I need to know if it's been saved already. If it has been, then we don't have to add it. If it has been saved, then we don't need to add a payroll ID. If it's not been saved, we need to assign it a payroll ID. And if you remember correctly, in this payroll list, we have a name range called payroll ID right here under payroll ID right here. And if we need to assign a new payroll ID, all I need to do is use the max function and increase that 1. And I'll show you how that works. And we've got that next payroll in case we do need to assign it to a new. We've got that located right here in B5. Here's our next payroll ID. And all that is a maximum of all of the payroll IDs. What is the max number? Plus 1. So in this case, our highest number is 22, right? So if we add 1 to that, we're going to get 23. And that's going to get us ready for the next. So just in case this is a new payroll, we know exactly what value here to put in. Payroll ID, we know it's going to be 23. Currently, this is that payroll ID we already have saved, so we don't need to know that. So we need to know whether it's saved or not. That's the important thing. So if B2 is empty, then it's a new payroll ID, right? If B2, if there's no payroll ID here, it's going to be new payroll. So we're going to use that. If it's new, what are we going to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is make B2 equal to B5. That's going to set the next payroll ID. We just went over that. That's going to B2 equals B5. What that is, B2 equals B5, right? It's going to take that, whatever numbers are next, and put it right here into B2 because that is going to be our next payroll ID, and that's how we assign unique ones that have never been used. So now we're going to say, now we know the payroll ID, we're going to define that into B2 so we can set that up. And the payroll list row, what row are we going to put it on? We're going to put it on the first available row in our payroll list. This is our payroll list. Our first available row in this case would be 25. So we need to find that. It's going to be the end XLUP plus 1. And XLUP will get us 24 plus 1 will get us 25. So we do just that. Here, sheet 18, that is our payroll list. A999 end XLUP row plus 1 is going to be our first available payroll row. So we know that because it's a new one. Now our payroll list row is going to be that first one. Next up, B2 is going to equal B5. We did that already. We don't need a duplicate of that. Okay. So we got that covered. Sheet, now we know our payroll list. Now we can assign information to our payroll. Now we can put all that information in, right? So what information do we need to put into that payroll list? Well, I need to put in the payroll ID, the range, the date, the from, the to, and the status. So I need to put all that information right here into the table. I want to make sure that's all there. So as we build it out. So A, of course, is going to be B5, our payroll ID. We could also put payroll ID. It's the same thing. We can use B2, B5. Actually, let's change this just to make it clear. Payroll ID. Okay. So now what is B? B is the payroll start, right? I need to know what our payroll start value is. And we're going to use the application worksheet function. And what I want to do is I want to put the payroll date range. I want to create a date range. This payroll range from the start date, I want to create a text file so that we can easily select this from a drop-down list. I'm going to base this on both the start and the end date. And where's our start and the end date? Our start and end date are back into the payroll details right here. It's from J6. Look at this. You ever seen this? It's weird. See that? Watch this. 6-6. You ever seen 2 rows? That's an interesting little error. I've never seen that. 2 rows with both 6, but as soon as you highlight over it, there's a bug. Okay, next up. So J6 and J8 is where our from and to dates are. That is our payroll from and to dates. So what I want to do is I want to create a payroll range based on those 2 dates in a specific format. You may want a different format. You may want to switch the month, the year. You can do that, and I'll show you how to do that right in there. We're going to use the application worksheet text function. Now you can also use something called format, but it doesn't work in every version of Excel. You can use format as well, but it doesn't work in every version. So we've used application worksheet function text, which does work in just about every version of Excel. And what do we're going to start with the payroll start date. That's a named range. Payroll start. Let me show that to you again, just so you know it's a named range in payroll. Right here, when we click on that, we see that it is, let's go ahead and hide that, payroll start. That's the name range. And the same thing with payroll end. We've got a pop-up calendar there, payroll end. So I've named both of those so that it's clear in our code exactly what we're working with. So we can use that instead of J8 or J6, we can use that. All right, so we have that in the code and we have that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to format it just the way we like. In this case, I want to format those dates MMDDYY. You can use any format you like right here. It's just a text file. You can use whatever you like. I just suggest you make the changes and you keep it consistent. And then I want to separate that with an underscore. And then, of course, I'm going to use the payroll end date and format it in the same way. That's going to set up our payroll range. And I need that because in the future, I want to look back and I want to select from specific payrolls. For example, I want to select specific payrolls here, and it's a little bit not clear. Let me zoom in a little bit there to 100%. Now we can see it clear. I want to select specific payrolls, and I want to do it using the date range, but I want to do it. So that's why we created. Of course, we could do payroll IDs, but you might not know from a payroll when, but this makes it clear when the payrolls. Of course, these are all the same. In your cases, it's all going to be different, right? They're all going to be different, but we're just in the testing phases right now. So of course, these will all be different dates and different ranges once we get completed. So you'll be able to select it and view that information. So that's going to be really helpful. So that's why we create that payroll in the list. That's why we create this payroll range. It's not working now. They're all the same, but it will be once we get it working. It's going to be all the same. It'll be all different. So not to worry about that. And by the time you get this file completed, by the time we get to the reports section next week, all of this will be functional as well, and it'll be accurate. I'll put some accurate data in there so it's a little bit easier for you. So I'll make sure that that's all working. So we want to make sure that it's the payroll start date and payroll end date based on that. I've been working with the same payroll dates each time, so they're the same. But if we were to change it, it's going to change, of course. All right, so we've got that. So we know why we're formatting those, and so we know we're going to put that in column B. In C, of course, we're going to start with the payroll date. I want to put in C equals, right here, C, what is C? It's equal to AM and BL3, payroll date. We don't need that. AM3, either one, not both. AM3 is going to be the payroll date. That's the date of the payroll. That we have multiple payroll dates, but they're all going to be the same. In other words, I've got a payroll date right here, and I've got a payroll date. Oh, we got to review. Oh, we got to review these employees. Let's go ahead and review them real quick. Kind of a pain. All right, because I wanted to show you something. I should know that. Okay, now that all we've reviewed, and we also have a payroll date right here in BD6. So we've got a few different payroll dates. If they updated anyone, it's going to update our database, so that's important. So we've got our payroll date. We want that. That's important. We need to know the payroll date. And I also want to know the payroll start date. What is the start of that payroll? And of course the end, the payroll end date. We need to know the end of that. Those are both going to be very important moving forward. So we want to store all that information in our database so that they're stated. And of course, we want to put a status. And in this case, this is the first time, our first employee, so we can set the status to pending review. So I want to set it not only in the database, right, not only shape, but I also want to set it in AM3. I want to set that database, that status right in the payroll screen. So not only do I want to put it here, right, in F, but I also want to put it right here in the status, or in this case, here in the status, AN3. I want to put it right here in AN3, so that way we can clearly see what the current status of this payroll is. As we move through each employee, it's going to be pending confirmation. Once we get to the last employee, it's going to change to pending confirmation, but as we are working through the employees, it's going to be pending review. So we want to know what status of the payroll, where we are currently as far as the status on the payroll. Okay, so we have that. AL3, we want that to be the payroll date range. We know we just discussed that in B, we just created that, and I want to put that in AL3. So I want to make sure that that payroll here, the payroll that we're working on, is in AL3. So that's going to be there as well. Next up, we have the save employee to pay. We want to save the employee to the pay list, right? So not only do I want to save it, I want to take this employee and I want to put him in the pay list here. Because I want to put him in there. I want to associate a specific, here it is. I want to associate a specific employee with a specific payroll. For example, on 22, I want to say payroll number 22, employee number 1036. I want to show that they're reviewed, and I want to show that they're currently saved on the payroll row 19, and then given a table row. So we want to save that into the employee list here. So give an example. When we go over that, 1036 was the last one. I want to save this employee into the payroll so I know associated this employee has been saved on this specific payroll. Okay, so we've got that there. So we run through that. And now next up, so the pay employee list row, we need to set a row. Is going to be the first available row in sheet 20. Sheet 20 is that same sheet I just showed you right here. Payroll employee list here, sheet 20. So what we're going to do is I just want to find the first available row. I want to find the first available row, and I want to put, in this case, of course, it's 156, and I want to put it right here. What do I want to put there? In fact, let's go ahead and freeze these columns so you always know what we're focused on. We'll take this and we'll freeze these columns so that we can see under view, we can freeze those panes. And now when we scroll, of course, we can see what we're focused on. So I want to put in the first available, I want to put payroll ID here. I want to put the employee ID here, the status, the payroll row, and the table row. So I want to put all that information right here. So we can do that within the database right here, just going through it. A, of course, so we're going to say the payroll employee is going to be the first available row. The last payroll employee row, what is that? That's going to be AB. I want the last employee to be paid. I want to know what that is. AB, so because I want to run through that. I want to run through it and save all of those if they're on there. I want to save because this is the brand new payroll. I want to save them all. What I want to do is I want to go through this payroll. I want to go through every single employee. And I want to take their ID and take the status. I want to put it onto that list. I want to put it right here. I'll put them all right here, just like this. I want to put them all right there. In fact, this payroll 22 includes all of these. Remember, we don't need the name because the ID is much more important. If the name changes, it's not going to be helpful, and ID won't change. It's very helpful. So basically, I want to take all this information here and put it right here. And so we're going to loop through this. We're going to determine the last row. In this case, it's 19. We're going to start out at row 9 and go all the way to 19, saving all this information to the employee. So we're going to run through that loop right in the payroll. So starting out right here, the employee payroll equal to 9, the last employee payroll row. Last employee, of course, is going to be AB, and that's going to get us our last row. So for each one of those, we're going to save the employee ID into column A in the list row. We're going to save the employee ID into column B, right? And now, of course, we're going to save the employee review status. I want to put that icon, right? That icon that's located in column AA. I want to put that right in column C, right? And if you take a look here, it's in column AA. I want to take that and I want to put it right here into column C, right here. We'll put that status right here. All right, so we've got that covered. And now what I want to do is in D, I want to put the row, the payroll row. What is the current row of the payroll? I want to save it inside there. What is that? Let's show you what that is, because that's really important. If we make a change, we want to know, right? So here we've got the payroll row. For example, this is 19, right? 19, 1036, 19. If you look here, this last employee here, Corby, was on row 19. So I want to save the row. I want to know what row of the payroll this employee is. So when I bring back these employees, when I bring them back inside this payroll, then they're all going to be put here. I'll put here. All right, so that's important. So we save them all there. So moving forward, we know why we also want to add in a sheet formula. I want to put the formula is going to be row because I want to know the row of the database. That's going to be helpful when we use advanced filters. AD equals employee list row. We want to set the employee list row into AD. What is that? That is here. I want to know right here. That's the one I just showed you. Now it's hidden, right? I want to put that list here. So if we make any changes, if we change the status, we know exactly where. Let's show these because otherwise I don't want you to get, if they're hidden, it's going to be, it just doesn't look pretty. But It's only temporary. Okay, so I want to save the row right here, 156. That way, if we change the status of this, for example, if it has a pending status and we go ahead and save it, then we know what status to change. We know it's row 156. Right here in the employee 156, we know it. Then we just need to change the icon right here in column C. So it's very easy once we know the row. So we save the row and then we hide the row, and that really helps us. All right, so moving forward on that. Else is a previously. All of this is if it's a new payroll, right? If it's a new payroll. If it's not a new payroll, we don't need to do anything like this because it's all this information, all the employees, all the payroll data has already been saved in both of those two tables, the employee list table and the payroll list table. It's been saved. So else, previously saved, we don't need to know. The only thing I need to know is the list of the payroll list. It's in B3. If it's previously saved, right, we need to know what the payroll, the list row, what is the payroll list row? Well, that is right here. I need to know what row our payroll is on in B3 here. I need to know it's on row 24, payroll list row 24. I need to know what row that is. That's very important because if we make any changes, we need to know what row to save those changes. If we change the status, I need to know, I know it's column F, but what row is it? So we always need that row. That's very important. All right, moving forward through our macro. Next up, review row. I need to know what employee we're on. That's going to be the current review row. It's going to be in B12. Why is it in B12? How does it get there? Well, if we look in our employee and our payroll right here, our payroll, and we go to selection change, we will see down here under selection change, B12. When we select anywhere from AA9 through AC, that's the list of employees, anything there, we're going to set the target row in B12. That's how we know the row. For example, let's take a look at that just so you can see that in action in the payroll screen. Now let's take a careful look at B12 right here. We're looking at this. As we select different rows, that changes. It always changes to the row that we're on, so we know what employee we're focused on. So we want to make sure we know what review row, that is the row of the current employee that we are reviewing. I want to track that, and we're tracking that right in B10, and I can, B12, and I can track that if we use that selection change code right here. So we're going to do B11 equals AB. We're going to set the employee to review. I want to put what employee that is, so I want to put that in B11, and then next thing in B12, so that B11 is always going to have the employee ID. We know that that employee ID, of course, is in column AB and the selected row. AB in the select row is going to put that ID right here, so I need that, and I need the row, so I need those two things. So those are important, so we can do that in the code. So B11 equals AB in the target row. That's going to put the ID to review, and of course the row to review here. And then of course we're going to run the employee show employee icon. That's brand new. I'll show that to you if we have enough time. And the payroll load employee review. That's the macro that we ran through before. So that's how we know it. Let's go back into that macro that we were on so we can focus on that. Now we know why B11 contains the employee ID. So next up, we need to add in whether they're salary or hourly. I need to save that information on. So if pay type, we're going to equal AJ8. That is the pay type, AJ8. Let's look at that in the application. If we look here under AJ8, it's going to be right here. AJ8 is going to be whether it's salary or hourly. We need to know that, and it's saved right here. So it's going to tell us whether it's a salary or hourly employee. All right, next up, now we have that if the pay type is hourly, then do the following, right? Else salary. So all this is focused on hourly employees. All of this is hourly, and then the rest, this is for salary. So let's go through that. If it's an hourly employee, then we need to know new regular pay item. If AK9 is empty, do you remember we went over that just a minute ago? What is an AK9? That is the row. If this is empty, that means it's never been saved before, right? In this case, it's been saved. But if it's empty, it has. In fact, let's go run the new payroll. right? And we'll take a look. So now you see it's a brand new payroll. We have pending. There's nothing here, right? Because it has not been saved yet. As soon as we save it, we're going to get a row. We go back. We're going to get a row. See how this has been saved. It's been assigned. But this one is still pending. No rows here. So we know we can look at this and we say, if it's empty, we know it has not been saved. If it's not empty, we know where to save it. So that we can use that AK9, AK10 to determine whether it has been saved or not. All right, so we use that. If AK9 is empty, then it's a new item. Then we need to give it a new row. What row are we going to give it in? Well, it's going to be pay item row, and that comes from our pay item list right here. Payroll item list. Payroll, this is where all the items are, tax items, regular pay, overtime pay, everything is in there. We need to give it a new row, and that row is going to be located right here. In fact, it's going to be the last row, NLX at +1. In this case, it would be 731 is where it would be assigned. So we got to save that information. I need to know it. So for the regular item, we're going to save that. If it's empty, we're going to save it in a new row. If it's not empty, we know the row already. So we can use those two parameters, those two if sections. If it's empty, then it's going to be a new item, right? We want to do all of this if it's new. But if it's not new, all of this has been added already. We just need to add the pay item row. All I need to do is add that information, set the pay item row to AK9. So if it's a new item, we need to add some information, right? We need to add all that information that we went over. What is that new information that we need to add? Well, if it's a new item, we need to add the payroll ID. We need to add the employee ID. Let's center that so it's a little bit clearer. We need to know the employee ID. We need to know the item type, the item name, the amount. If it's hours for some items, pay date, pay year. We need to put in the formula for that. We need to put in the formula for this. We need to know the payroll. So there's all this information for a new item that we need to add in. We only need to add it in once, but we do need to add it in. So we got to cover each one of those in the code. So let's go ahead and scroll down here. We'll scroll up here so you can see it here, both of them at the same time. So A, of course, is the payroll ID. So we have that. The employee ID is going to be in column B. Column C is going to be regular pay. In this case, we're focused only on regular pay, so we're going to set the item type to regular pay. And of course, in G, we're going to set a formula. This formula, we're going to use an index match because I need to pull up the pay date of this payroll. We went over that briefly, but remember, this is going to take this payroll ID. It's going to look for this payroll ID. It's going to look for it in this list, and it's going to pull up this pay date right here. So I need to pull that pay date from this list because I want a dynamic pay date here that can change when we change our main payroll date. So that's why we have that there. That's why we add this formula in via VBA. So we add that formula in there. All right, next up, I also want the year, and of course that's going to be based on G. G is the pay date. So we're just going to have the year of the pay date because I want to know what year it is. That's going to help us having that helper column that says the pay year there. All right, next up I want to know the row. So we're going to put the row in, of course, J. J is going to take care of a row. And the payroll row, we're going to have that as well under I. In this case, we don't need a payroll row simply because it is a regular pay. Regular pay goes in one spot always. We don't need to know the row because it's always. For variable data, for example, in payroll, we know payroll's always going to be here. We know that overtime's always going to be here. But tax items, we don't necessarily know the row. When it comes to specific deductions or additions, we don't know the row. So in that case, we need to save the row. But payroll, we know the row in this. So we don't need to save a row for those items there. Let's go back to the list and continue on in our payroll item list in our code. So now we have it. Now we're going to select the pay item. AK9 value equals the pay item row. Again, we're going to set that in the payroll to our row so we know where to make it. AK9 here. Put in that right here. So now we've covered if it's a regular item. Else, remember else, that means it's already been saved. The pay item row, we know already it's already in AK9 because it's been previously saved. In this case, it's a new item. In this case, it's an existing item. We just need to get that pay item row. Now we have the pay item row because it's either new or an existing. So now we can update both the regular hourly pay amount and the regular hours. E is going to be our let's go ahead and pull that back up right here, payroll item list. E is going to be our amount. F is going to be our hours. So we need to put those in. I want to put those in so we can see. Now, E is going to be AJ9. AF9 is where our hours are. AF9 is where our hours are. Here, right here, AF9 is going to be our regular hours. AE, let's go ahead, and our amount is AJ9. So I want to put those things. I don't want to save them right in our table so we can use them for next time. Now, of course, keep in mind, hours are good, but we need, well, let's go back to where we were. Hours are 9, but this is a calculated amount. So in other words, this formulated amount gets saved to the database, but it's not brought back. It's not when we load this employee, it's based on this. This way, if we make changes, it's automatically updated here. So keep that in mind. So we save both the pay amount and the hours here based on those two values. All right, next up, what if it's an overtime amount? Well, it's pretty much the same thing. Again, we need to check. In this case, it's AK10. Is it a new item? In other words, is AK10 blank? For example, in this case, it would be new because AK10 is blank, but in this particular employee, we've already reviewed it, so it would have a specific value here. However, when we click on Lisa, we'll see that this particular has already rows assigned to it, and yet Lisa does not because it has not been reviewed yet. All right, so back into our code. Again, if AJ10 does not equal 0, then we need to add in an overtime amount. We only need to go through this if there's actually an overtime amount. Otherwise, we can skip all that. So the first thing we're going to do is check AJ10. If it does not equal 0, then we need to add it in. So, for example, if this AJ10, let's go ahead and pull it here. AJ10, if that does not equal 0, then we should add in overtime. Otherwise, there's no need to add that in. We don't need to go through that code if there's no overtime. So that's the first thing we're going to check. The second thing we're going to check is I need to know if AK10 is empty. If this is empty, then it has not been saved in our database table yet. If there is a value there, it has been saved in. So that's the first thing we're going to check. If it's empty, then we're going to do all of this. Again, we're going to add in the payroll ID just like we did, but in this type, we're going to say C in the payroll item, the pay item type. In this case, it's overtime pay or OT pay. We're going to assign a different type, and again, but we're going to use the same formulas we did above, the same year formula, the same row, and of course, we're going to set the pay item row, AK10. We're going to go ahead and put that row right here so that we know it's now been saved. Of course, if it's not empty, that would be else it's an existing. We can set that pay item row to AK10. So now we have the pay item row, whether it's an existing or whether it's new. We've just determined whether it's new. We've set a row one way or the other. This way, when we update both the overtime amount and the overtime hours in columns E and F, we're going to use that row. Either way, new or existing, we covered those. Of course, if it's existing, we've already saved this previously, so we don't need to save that information. These two items get saved regardless of whether it's new or existing. So if it's new, we do this. If it's existing, we do this. These two items are done new or existing. Both of them get updated regardless if it's new or existing. And that's the overtime pay and overtime hours. All right, so what if it's a salary? These two items, these two here are based on hourly. All this is based on hourly, but what if it's a salary? If it's a salary, we do something else. Well, what is it that we're going to do? Well, in this case, we're going to go through. If AK10 again is its value, then it's a new salary. In this, we're going to also use AK10 because in this case, a salary employee, the information would be saved here. Let's pull up a salary. Here we go. A salary, if it's a salary, AJ8 is a salary, we want to know, I want to look here, it says, has this salary been saved to the table or not? AK10 is where we're going to store that row. And if this is blank, we know to add it as a new item. And if it's existing, we know to add it and update that specific row. So again, same thing, but in this case, salary pay. Our item type is going to be salary pay. So we've used a different type for each one, but everything else is pretty much the same. The payroll ID, the employee ID, and of course, all that. So all this information is based on based on the row. And of course, we're going to add in the salary pay amount. There's no hours focused on a salary, so we don't add hours in. There's no hours. It is just the amount. So E is the only column that we're going to be changing here. And we're going to be adding in the salary amount, not the hours. Hours are not focused on salary employees. Although you could, if you did want to track hours per salary employee, you could, of course, add in F. All right, next up. So now we've added in all the pay. We've added in hourly. We've added in salary. We've added in overtime. So we've covered all that. Now we're going to be focused on tax items. We're going to be focused on 4 different other information. We're going to be focused on the tax items. In this case, there's none, but in this case, we have tax items. We're going to be focused on other payroll deductions. We're going to be focused on other payroll additions. And of course, paid leave. If there's any paid leave, we're going to focus on that. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now and go through the code so we can see how we did that. Of course, the tax items, we need to run through the entire table. What is that table? That is this table right here from row 14 all the way through 25. We're going to run through this table and see if there's any items there. If there are, we're going to add both the name and the amount here. And of course, I need to add in the row here. If there's a row here, we know it's previously been saved. If there's no row in A014, we know it is existing. So we're going to use the same principles throughout. Again, if AL and the payroll equals empty, then exit 4. Why? Because this is the last. If AL is nothing, we're going to exit. I don't want to go through every single row. The first row that we come to that's empty, we're going to exit. That's why you want to make sure to enter your data in order. Make sure you don't leave blank rows. You could, however, if you wanted it, but it would be kind of weird. You could go to the last row and not check that. So it's kind of up to you. But I like my code to run fast, so that's why we've decided to exit on the first blank row. So the first check is if it's blank, exit out. We're done with tax items. So we've got that covered. Next up, I need to know is AO and the row blank or not. So that's our next check. If AO and the payroll is empty, of course, then it's a new item. And again, we're going to add in all the same information, payroll ID, employee ID, except in this case, the type's going to be tax item. Everything else is going to be the same, all just as we did before. The pay item row, we're going to set that in AO for new. And of course, if it's got a value, if it's existing, we're going to make the pay item row whatever was in AO. All right, so now we can both set the tax item name and the amount in our tax list. So we've set that up. Now it's the same exact thing for payroll deductions. We run through the list and it's the same thing, exactly the same thing. The only difference, of course, in this case, we're going to add in our other deduction. The only one difference is the name difference, other deductions. The same thing for payroll additions. The only difference is the name, other additions. Again, also for employee paid leave, we're going to add in paid leave here, paid leave. We're running pretty much the same things. Again, same thing. Continuing on, we're adding all that in. And of course, adding in the paid leave name and the hours, in this case, hours. Previously, it's amount, right? Amounts go in column E, whereas hours go in column F. So that's pretty sure. Again, let's look at our payroll item list. Amounts go in item E, hours go in column F. So, of course, the type goes in C and the name goes in D. So that's how we add in all that information into that. And that's how we can. Let's go ahead and take a look. Now that we've covered that, and let's continue on. Now what I want to do is I want to update the status of the employee reviewed, right? I want to update that. So in this case, I want to double check, are we at all of the, let's go ahead, here we are. AA, this adds the completed checkbox. This U with the 2 dots above it, that is the check mark here. So that is this check mark. You see that check mark right here? We're going to add that right in AA so that we know that has been reviewed. So as soon as we run through the review, we click Save and Next, and that check mark gets added automatically to that specific. So we do that right here. AA and the review row equals U. Next up, I want to check to update the status in the employee payroll list. I also need to take that check mark and I need to put it right in the employee payroll item, right? That employee's been reviewed. So I need to take that status and from that hourglass icon, I need to mark it as a checkbox. We can do that in column C because I want to update the status right here. So that's column C of the employee list. So we can do that right here. We can say if the AD does not equal empty. Why do we say that? AD in the review row. That means we want to make sure that there's actually a row number. We need to know what row to place it in. And that row, as you remember, is saved right here. So we want to make sure AD is not empty first because we can't save it. So as long as there's a row here, 167, we can save it. We just want to make sure there's a row to save it. So we check the row, AD is not empty. Then sheet 20, that is our employee payroll list. C, column C, what does it equal? It equals AD. This is the row. This is the row. Remember, C in the row, AD is the row, value equal, this is the checkbox. So we change the font also so we can update the status also in the database. This way when we load, we always have their exact there. All right, next up, I need to know, are we at the last employee row? Because if we've reviewed all the employees, if we've gone through all of them, then what I want to do is I want to change this status right here to pending confirmation, AN3. And how do we know that? Well, that's what we're going to do next. We're going to use this right here. I need to know if this is 1, this value, this is our total number. If this is 1, once we get to the all of them, it's going to be, once we put check marks, it's going to be all 1. This is our count if. What are we counting? Counting all the way down there, all the way down here, if they're all U, and we're going to divide that by the total number of text in this column. All right, so if we have all of these, so for example, if these 11 are all check marks, count all the check marks if it's 11, and it's the same as count A, means count the cells with text. If that's 11 and this is 11, then we know that they're all check marks. We can use count. We're using count if they're all check marks, and count A. That helps us. That gives us our percentage. So right now it's 18%. If this is 1 or 100, 1 is 100, in that case, then we know that they're all, then we can change the status. So for example, once we get, let's go ahead and show that to you. We'll go ahead and review the rest of those, save and next. We'll just quickly review and click save and next. Once we get to the very last one, we have reached it all, and now you'll see it's 100%. So if this is 100% or 1, the value of 1, we can change this to pending confirmation, and that's just what we've done here. If B19 equals 1, then AN3 equals pending confirmation. And of course, what I want to do is I want to change in sheet 18 the status of the payroll. I also want to change the status of the payroll, that specific payroll, so that we know the status of the payroll is saved. Here in the payroll list, here I want to save it here in F. I want to put that to pending confirmation. So I want to do those two things if we've reached all the employees, if we've reached all. Otherwise, if A, B, and the review do not equal empty, then select. And all this does is when we're continuing on a payroll, it just selects the run below. As long as it's not empty, as long as A, B is not empty, it's going to select the one below. Right now, we've reviewed them all. So that's all that line of code does. And then it says, message box, you have reached the last employee row. Okay, and then we're going to select another cell on the sheet. That's just selected. All right, so now we've covered that, but let's take a look at this. I love this little progress bar here, and all this is a simple line chart, a 2D line chart. If you'll see, this is the chart 22. And if we take a look here under the format the data series, this is where the magic happens in the format the data series. First of all, I don't want them separated, right? If they were to be separated, you're going to see two different lines. You're going to see two different series. One is the total available, right? And it's actually, let's go ahead and bring that down, right? So here we have two different ones. We have a blank one with no fill. Bring that up so you can see it. A blank one with no fill. We have two different series, and we have one with a green fill, right? Two different series, but I've overlapped them. All right, you see, so when we select on this and we click the format that is, you see that if we keep them overlapped exactly, right, then we have them, they're hidden. So one's on top of the other. So that's really, really helpful. And then all we do is reduce the size of it, so we make it a little bit smaller, and then just bring it down here. So we can make it a little smaller. So that's how it's basically a basic 2D pie chart with two values, the employees to pay and the employee reviewed. So we put them on overlap and then we color one. So that's how we got to do that. So that's how, and then I take this text file right here and I just bring it right over here to match the size of it right here. So that's how we do it. And then it's a quick explanation, but it's a great way to show a bar chart. So as we move through, it increases. So let's go ahead and take a look at just how we would, once we review it. So in this case, we've got a new payroll. We've got 011. Why is it 011? Because none of them contain checkbox, right? So this is 0. But as soon as this changes, we'll see. So when we click Save and Next, now we'll see. Okay, so now we see it's 10. So now we're at 9%. If we click Save and Next again, now this value changes to 18, right? And we have those two series. So we compare these two and then we overlap them. Here's one right here. Let's go down. Here's one right here and here's the other one right here, but they're overlapped. There's two series, one green, one white, but they're overlapped. And then of course we take the text, which is just a completely separate text file. So that's how it's done. So as we move through those, we're using these formulas to help us move through. All right, great. So we've got that covered. Okay, next up, what I want to do is I want to go into the summary create. So when we click there, of course, it's not going to let us. And why is that? Because not all the employees are reviewed. Let's take a look at how we did that. Of course, let's move this back up a little bit. In our payroll select sections module area, payroll select, we have a macro called payroll select summary section. And the first thing I want to do, if B19 does not equal 1, remember, that's the one we just went through. B19 is the same thing right here. If this does not equal 1, then we know we're not complete. Remember, 100% and 1 are exactly the same, so we can use either one. If it's not equal 1, then we want a message box. All employees have not been reviewed. Please review each employee before moving. So we just have a message box, and then we exit. We don't want to move to summary unless all employees have been reviewed. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just review all the employees right now by clicking Save and Next. And if we skip one, right, and click Save and Next, now there's 2. We've reached last, but still we have not finished. So we're still going to get that message box until we select on that Save and Next, Save and Next. Okay, now they've all been reviewed. Now basically what I want to do is I want to take all these employees, I want to bring them over to the summary and create. So now when we click summary and create, I want to bring these employee IDs all the way and place them right here. And then everything else is going to be based on a formula, and we'll update this formula as well. Actually, there's an error. This should be a formula. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let's add in that formula. What is that formula? We're going to say equals index. What are we indexing? Well, we're going to index the employee name. That's what we want. Employee name. So we're going to put it right here. And what is the row that we want? We're going to put a match. We're going to use the match. What are we maxing? We're going to look up the employee ID. And of course, what type of named range? We're going to use employee ID named range. We're going to look it up. Employee ID right here. That's the name range. And we want an exact match. And of course, we want that as well. So we want that next column 1, right? Column 1. And of course, we can wrap that in if error. There we go. Now we've got it. Now if we Control C and we paste down our formulas, we're going to have different, and we'll fix that up, formulas. Now we're going to have different employees for each one. So we want to make sure that that's fixed in the code. And so we're going to also wrap that on if error. I always like to wrap if error and then comma and then empty just in case there's an error. And of course, we're going to paste that down. But right now, what the idea is, I don't want to save formulas. I only want to paste in these specific employee IDs, and then the rest are going to be formulas. And I want to take those formulas from here, and I want to copy them down just in the rows that contain data. So we paste the formulas right just like that. So that's what I want to do within the code. So let's go ahead and do just that. The first thing we want to do is take all those employee IDs from the previous sheet or that are on the payroll and bring them right into here. So let's go ahead and do that. But first we need to do a few things. We need to get the last row, employee row. What is that? That's AB99. I need to know the last row here. AB we're going to use. So we need to know, we know the starting row is 9. We need to get the last row 19. So we need to pull that up and get that over to there so we get that last row. And next thing up, we want to clear the contents. I want to clear any contents. So this is what we don't need, BC, right? I don't want to clear anything here. I just want to clear BC. Everything else is going to be formulas. In fact, I'm going to take the formula up here and I'm going to copy it all the way down. So we only want to clear BC. So I fixed that there. BC, so I want to clear all those contents. Now, BC9 through BD and the last employee row equals AB. So all we're doing here is copying the IDs. All I'm doing is taking the IDs. I'm saying this, of course, this starts on row 9, and of course, this starts on row 9, so we're good. All I'm doing is going to take these and bring them over to right here. So bring them right here. How we're doing that. All right, so next up, we've brought over, let's just say bring copy over employee IDs. So we need to know those IDs. Those IDs are important, so we'll bring those over. I want to also copy over the payroll date and the payroll status. I want to put the payroll date here and I want to put the payroll status right here. So I just want to bring that information over because it's like a new screen. So we want to bring that information over. So that's important. And next up, if it's pending confirmation, I've got two different groups here. This is pending confirmation, right? So we've got a different look, but when we confirm it, look, it changes. This changes, and then the print payroll. So I've got two different groups. This group is called pay summary confirmed group. This is the confirmed group. The other one is pay summary pending group. Those are two different shapes. So based on the status, we're going to show that. So if the status equals pending confirmation, then I want to hide the confirmed and I want to show the pending. Otherwise, in this case, show the confirmed, right now it's confirmed, and hide the pending. So it's going to hide or show these different groups based on that, and they're both there in there. One's just hidden or not. All right, next up, the from date and the to date, we're going to set those. I also want to set the from date and the to date right here, so we can set those, bring those over from J6 and J8. Of course, we can use our named ranges too as well. And of course, I want to hide certain columns and I want to show certain columns. I want to hide all the other columns, and I only want to show, of course, BB through BL here. In this case, of course, I want to show AZ through BY. And I want to hide all the others. So just showing those columns. And of course, I'm going to hide all of the other pay detail. I want to hide this group, which is called the pay review group of shapes. I want to make sure that this group called the pay detail group, I want to make sure that's hidden, and I only want to show the summary and create. I only want to show this group. So we just hide different groups based on it. And then of course I want to set the active scroll to 52. And then I want to load the payroll summary, this macro right here. I'm going to load that up. And that basically loads the employees and loads information. So that's a great way to load. I'm going to cover this. We've pretty much covered the employee. I'm going to cover a few of these formulas next time, and then we're going to move on to reports. But I'll cover these formulas next time because we're way over time today, and I want to make sure that I haven't thrown too much at you. So I do appreciate you. And if you haven't, of course, please check out the dashboard course where you're going to learn automated filters, single click column headers, sorting, filtering, and tons more in an amazing dashboard course. Our students are really loving that. And I'll include the description of that dashboard. That's how it helps us. And I really appreciate you checking out that amazing dashboard course. And I'll include the links in the description below. Of course, if you'd like this free workbook, you can also get that with the links in the description below. So make sure you pick up a copy of this workbook and take a look at it for yourself. That's it for today. I do love your shares and likes and appreciate all of you following. Of course, make sure you've subscribed and turned on that notification bell. We're going to get through this. We've got a few more to cover. We've got reports, we've got sharing workbooks, and we've got a few other things to cover. But otherwise, we're going to get this done real quick. Thank you so much for joining us.